Jeff Greene is a political outsider and a billionaire, although he made a lot of money speculating against the subprime loans in the housing market, which collapsed. Mr. Greene joins us from West Palm Beach. Let me start just with that question, sir. You have the perfect resume in this environment where people are mad at all the politicians, an outsider, somebody who can self-finance. You look at that and you think, here's a guy who can tap into the country's current mood, and yet you know the obvious criticism. They're going to say, here's a guy who made a lot of money betting against you, betting against the value of your home.
Well, look, John, that's not the case at all. I took on the biggest banks on Wall Street. When I made my investment, I went up against the biggest banks on Wall Street. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. And I'm planning to go to Washington and go up against the special interests and the biggest power brokers and party brokers in Washington for the people of Florida, like I did one against the bankers on Wall Street. You got to remember, when I made my investments, not one penny was lost by a single Florida homeowner because of my investments against Wall Street.
So then answer your Democratic rival Kendrick Meek. He says this: Jeff Greene profited from the misery of millions of Americans who lost their home equity, if not their homes. You know that's going to be his argument against you.
Well, you know, again, it's a desperate career politician who, just doesn't want to see an independent Democrat like me in this race and is trying to attack me with no grounds whatsoever. My investment was only against the investment banks on Wall Street. No homeowner was affected by it didn't lost one nickel, one penny because of these investments, and it's Kendrick Meek just trying to distort the truth.
Okay. Do you worry at all in this environment? People will bring this up. You say distort the truth. You did make money by investing, essentially, betting that the housing market was going to go down. And you said this in October 2008. This is an interview with Forbes magazine. I got into real estate very much by accident, but I've never had more fun than now. 1 week before that interview, the Dow plunged by 778 points, the biggest single-day loss ever.
Well, I was never shorting the Dow or having fun, and I never have fun watching the Dow drop or people losing their homes. That's not fun. I don't know. That's not what this is about. What this is about is the future of Florida and jobs, and that's why I'm in this race. I almost lost everything I had in the real estate crash of the early 90s, and when I first moved to Florida with my parents over 40 years ago, my dad had lost everything he had in New England, and so when I got involved in these investments against Wall Street power brokers and against the Wall Street investment banks, I was trying to protect my own investments and trying to protect the jobs of the people that worked with me in those investments.
Let me ask one more on this because you keep bringing up that theme. You talk about going against the Wall Street investment firms as if they were the evil enemy, but a friend that you had helping you there was John Paulson. You've had to defend yourself. You were Mike Tyson and Heidi Fleiss and people like that, but John Paulson, who was a hedge fund manager, he advised you at one point. You act as if they were the evil empire, but you got a lot of advice from him.
Well, look, again, as I said earlier, I was nervous about the real estate crash because I didn't want to lose everything again like I had done once in my life, and I'd seen that happen to my dad. And so I went to talk to John Paulson, who I'd known, and asked what he was doing, and he told me about these about these investments that can be made against the investment banks on Wall Street, and that's what I did. These had nothing to do with homeowners in Florida. Not one Florida homeowner lost a penny because of the investments I made. My investment was against Wall Street. Had I lost it, this was not like Goldman Sachs where I was doing a two-sided investment. This was a one-sided investment, and if I lost money, I would have written a big check out to the big investment banks on Wall Street, and by making money, I took money from the investment banks on Wall Street, and the money I took was to protect my own investments. It wasn't any kind of speculation.
Let's talk about some of the big issues the next senator from the state of Florida will face when he comes here to Washington. One of the big questions is what do we do about not only the big annual federal budget deficits, but the long-term debt facing this country? Does Jeff Greene believe we need to raise taxes, cut spending, a mix of those things? How do we deal with the deficit issue?
Okay, well, look, raising taxes is off the table right now. When you have here in Florida, we have since Charlie Crist has become governor, our unemployment rate has gone from just over 3% to just under 12%. So we're not in any position to be raising any taxes right now. The way to work to get out of this deficit problem, to solve the economic problems facing Florida and our nation today, is to work our way out of it by creating jobs. 24 million Americans are underemployed or unemployed today. Put them all back to work, and all of a sudden things are going to look a lot better in this country. Since Kendrick Meek, by the way, has been in Congress, you know that we've lost almost 700,000 jobs just in Florida? And the problem is that these career politicians just don't know how to create jobs. I'm the only one of major candidates who's actually ever signed the front of a paycheck and not just the back of a paycheck. And that's why I want to take my experience as a job creator and a successful businessman and bring it to Washington and try and start to work on solving these problems. So the answer to your question is we have to create jobs, get our economy back on track, and that will take care of the deficit. Another way that we can start working on this deficit is by getting rid of our dependence on foreign oil. I mean, sending off $500 billion a year to foreign regimes, many of whom are certainly not our friends, is not a way to get rid of a deficit. To me, when I think how over 40 years ago we put a man on the moon, but we're just now inventing our first electric car, it infuriates me. And I know why it's happening. It's the special interests in Washington taking care of these politicians who are making the wrong decisions for us on the ground here.
A couple more questions in that vein. You mentioned put them all back to work. That will help deal with the deficit problem. One of the president's top economic advisors, Larry Summers, says he sees persistent high unemployment for at least 5 years. Do you think he's wrong?
You know, I mean, I certainly hope he's wrong. I think that there's a lot we can do right now to take care of the jobs in Florida. I don't believe it's going to take 5 years till we start creating jobs. If we need to start getting green jobs in Florida. And here in Florida, one thing with our housing bust is, in the aftermath of our housing bust, we have a lot of very skilled construction workers I talk to all the time here in Florida, and are eager and ready to get back to work. Why don't let's get some tax incentives going for insulating our homes here in Florida and for taking care of reducing our dependence on foreign oil and getting these guys back to work. There's a lot we can do, and I don't agree it's going to take 5 years. I think I think we can do much better than that. When I get to Washington, I'm going to make sure we do much better than that.
One more question on the long-term structural debt of this country. A lot of people say to get it under control, you need to have major entitlement reforms. Do you favor or oppose, let's start with this one, raising the eligibility age, the retirement age for Social Security?
Absolutely not. There's no reason to do that. I think that the Social Security fund is okay for many, many years. We need to get a bipartisan commission set up to analyze how to deal with these issues. It's not a political football, and it never should be. The people of Florida have worked hard, and they deserve a decent retirement in which they're going to have a decent, good health care and enough money to live a good life.
What about raising the eligibility age for Medicare? You put that in the same box?
Absolutely. There's no reason we have to do that. People in America have played by the rules. They've worked hard, and they deserve to have health care. And my mother's 83 years old, and she lives here in West Palm Beach. So when I talk to my mom and her friends, I know what the elderly go through here, and this is not the time to be raising the ages for Medicare and for Social Security. This is the time to be focusing on what the career politicians have not done enough of, which is creating jobs, getting our economy back on track, and watch, things will start to work in all of these areas again.
Let me ask you lastly, the career politicians don't have the resources that you have. How much of your own money are you willing to spend in this primary against Kendrick Meek? And then if you're successful in a general election campaign against Governor Christ running a non-party affiliated and Marco Rubio as the Republican?
John, look, I will spend whatever it takes to get my message out and to be competitive against these career politicians who are funded by special interests and lobbyist money. Let me tell you this, though. I won't take 1 penny of special interest money, not in the primary, not in the general election, not after I'm elected. Never. And when I go to Washington, the first day I get there, I'm not going to be having fundraisers to pay off a campaign debt. I'm not going to be out trying to work with the lobbyists and special interests that bought me my seat. I'm going to be working for the people of Florida day one. I've worked hard every day of my life, and I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can to get these problems solved. You know, Charlie Crist, look at Charlie Crist as an example. He's been governor for almost 3.5 years now. The state's falling apart. Our unemployment rate has gone, like I said, from 3 to 12%. We have the worst housing foreclosure crisis in the country, and he spent most of his term out raising money around the country to run for another office. Kendrick Meek, same thing. He spent most of his term in Congress trying to raise money from special interests to run for office. So I will spend what it takes, whatever it takes to be competitive.
I'm going to come back one more time
before
I say
thank you. But I'll tell you one more thing. Every penny I have, I made, and I worked hard for it, and I'm happy to spend it.
Does whatever it take, is that $25 million, $50 million? Can it go higher than that if that's what it takes?
Look, I don't have a budget. I mean, I can tell you this. I think that this race, we filed on Friday, and I've received literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, emails, phone calls encouraging me and telling me, Jeff, we're so happy that we have someone who's not a career politician, who comes from the business world to come in and solve these problems. I think that this race is going to be a very clear choice for voters between three career politicians on one hand and a guy who's worked hard and made money and lived the American dream and understands how to create jobs on the other. And I'm very much looking forward to this being a race about ideas in those choices.